Welcome to How to Survive the Apocalypse. I'm your host, Ben Carter. Imagine a world plunged into darkness, not the peaceful darkness of a starlit night, but a consuming, relentless blackness that swallows the sun, erases the horizon, and turns familiar landscapes into alien territories. This is not a dystopian novel or a Hollywood blockbuster. This is a potential future that humanity may face, a future where the end of the world is not just possible, but imminent. In the face of this catastrophic reality, the human mind is our most potent weapon and our most vulnerable point. The mind, with its insatiable curiosity and capacity for understanding, can be our salvation or our downfall. As we grapple with the concept of the end, as we attempt to comprehend the incomprehensible, our minds must be prepared, honed, and fortified against the onslaught of fear and uncertainty. The human psyche is not designed to process the end of everything. It's wired for survival, for optimism, for the continuation of life. Yet, the concept of apocalypse, the end of all things, is a relentless intruder, invading our consciousness, forcing us to confront our mortality and the fragility of our world. It is a concept that challenges our very perception of reality, one that demands a profound shift in our mental landscape. Our minds must be made ready to navigate this labyrinth of despair, to embrace the chaos, to find order in disorder, to seek hope in hopelessness. But how does one prepare for such an event? How does one train the mind to withstand the seismic shock of the world's end? The answer lies in the mystery of the human mind itself. Our minds are not static entities but dynamic processors, capable of adaptation and evolution. They are able to absorb, analyze, and synthesize information, to transform fear into action, despair into resilience. By understanding the mind's potential, we can begin to prepare it for the unthinkable. We can start by confronting our fears directly. Instead of retreating from the concept of the end, we must engage with it, study it, understand its implications and its inevitability. We must cultivate a mindset that can accept this reality, that can remain stable and functional in the face of the ultimate existential crisis. This is not about succumbing to despair or nihilism. It's about training the mind to withstand extreme circumstances, to process the unprocessable. It's about developing a psychological toolkit that can help us confront the end, to maintain our sanity when the world around us crumbles. The end of the world is a concept that transcends our conventional understanding of existence. It forces us to question, to grapple, to adapt. And in doing so, it offers us a unique opportunity to explore the depths of our minds, to understand our fears, our hopes, and our capacity for survival. The end may be unimaginable, but preparing our minds to face it is not just possible, it's necessary. In the ominous prelude to a world's collapse, warning signs often remain concealed in plain sight, like cryptic prophecies encoded in the fabric of our everyday existence. These triggers can be economic, environmental, or social, any one of which, or a lethal convergence of all, could signal the world's unraveling. Economic indicators are perhaps the most tangible. The collapse of a major economy, a devastating global recession, or a sudden, unmanageable surge in inflation could each presage the end times. Economic stability is a cornerstone of societal function, and its erosion can rapidly spiral into chaos and disorder. An economic apocalypse wouldn't manifest with fire and brimstone, but rather in the cold, hard lines of plummeting stock markets, soaring unemployment rates, and the shuttering of financial institutions. Yet, the environment often whispers of impending doom long before the economy stumbles. Rising global temperatures, increasingly erratic weather patterns, and the relentless erosion of biodiversity could signal that the world is on an irreversible path towards ruin. The environment is a complex, delicately balanced system. When pushed beyond its limits, it can snap back with devastating force, unraveling the very conditions that allow life to thrive. Social triggers, though more abstract, are no less potent. Intensifying political polarization, escalating conflict, and the erosion of civil liberties can serve as harbingers of a societal breakdown. In the face of such challenges, social cohesion can fracture, leading to the disintegration of communities, nations, even civilizations. However, in discussing these signs, it's crucial to remember that they are not isolated events, but interwoven threads in the tapestry of our world's demise. The economic, environmental, and social strands are intricately linked, each influencing and amplifying the others. A spiraling economy can exacerbate social unrest, which in turn can hasten environmental degradation. This interconnectedness underscores the immense complexity of predicting the end. Yet recognizing these signals is a crucial step in preparing our minds for the unimaginable. By understanding the potential triggers, by recognizing their signs and their implications, we can cultivate the mental resilience required to face the end, turning our gaze towards the approaching storm with clarity and courage. As the storm clouds of apocalypse gather on the horizon, the initial shockwave reverberates through society, manifesting in widespread panic and chaos. Chaos is the child of uncertainty, and as the signs of the end become more apparent, uncertainty grips the hearts of people across continents. Governments, once the stabilizing forces of society, grapple with the enormity of the impending crisis. Some may attempt to downplay the severity of the situation, perhaps to prevent mass panic or to cling to the last vestiges of control. Others, faced with the undeniable scale of the unfolding catastrophe, may openly acknowledge the situation, seeking to rally their populations for the challenges ahead. In these turbulent times, the essential role of law enforcement becomes ostensibly clear. Tasked with maintaining order amidst the chaos, they face an uphill battle. Riots erupt, looting becomes rampant, and safety becomes a dwindling commodity. As fear intensifies, so does the strain on these institutions, many of which buckle under the weight of the crisis. The thin blue line, a symbol of the barrier between civilization and chaos, begins to blur, then fade. Ordinary people, suddenly thrust into extraordinary circumstances, react in myriad ways. Some succumb to the enveloping fear, their actions driven by a primal instinct for survival. They may hoard resources, fortify their homes, or even resort to violence. Others, however, rise above the chaos, their actions guided by compassion and a sense of responsibility towards their fellow humans. They form bonds of solidarity, pooling resources and helping those less able. Even amidst the gloom, sparks of humanity's inherent capacity for kindness, resilience, and cooperation flicker defiantly. The breakdown of societal order is not a single event but a series of escalating incidents. It begins subtly, almost imperceptibly, with small cracks appearing in the fabric of society. Over time, these cracks widen, the damage spreading until the very foundations of our civilization begin to crumble. Understanding this process is crucial. It serves as a stark reminder that our world, while incredibly robust, is not impervious to collapse. But it also highlights the importance of maintaining our humanity, our sense of community and empathy in the face of adversity. Even in the darkest of times, these are the qualities that define us, that give us hope, and that ultimately may be our salvation. In the immediate aftermath of a cataclysm, the first 72 hours are critical. This is the period where you must assert control over your circumstances, establish a survival routine, and secure your basic needs. The 4 pillars of immediate survival are water, shelter, safety, and stability. Water is the essence of life. Humans can survive for weeks without food, but only a few days without water. Finding a reliable source of clean, drinkable water should be your first priority. Streams, lakes, and rivers can be sources, but remember, the water you find might not be safe to drink. Boiling water can kill most types of disease-causing organisms, so make sure to have a means to start a fire. Rainwater can also be harvested, and if you're near the sea, learn how to distill seawater. Next, you need to find or create shelter. This is particularly important in extreme weather conditions. Your shelter should be robust enough to protect you from the elements, yet discreet enough to avoid unwelcome attention. In the wilderness, caves, hollowed-out trees, or a simple lean-to can provide protection. In an urban environment, abandoned buildings can offer shelter, but be wary of potential hazards. Safety is paramount. In the immediate aftermath of societal collapse, danger can come from multiple sources: environmental hazards, wild animals, and unfortunately, other people. To maintain safety, stay vigilant, avoid confrontational situations, and protect your resources. Having a basic knowledge of self-defense is invaluable in such circumstances. Lastly, establishing a routine and maintaining stability can help keep the mind focused and lessen the impact of psychological trauma. Keeping track of time, maintaining hygiene, getting adequate rest, and even simple routines like gathering firewood or scouting for food can provide a semblance of normalcy in an abnormal world. The first 72 hours might be a whirlwind of survival tasks that push you to your limits. But remember, your mind is your most powerful tool. Keeping calm, staying focused, and making reasoned decisions can mean the difference between life and death. These initial steps are not only about securing your immediate survival, they also lay the foundation for your ability to endure in the long term. After all, survival is not just about living through the crisis, but about adapting to a new world, a world that has fundamentally changed. As the initial shock of societal collapse subsides, the reality of sustained survival sets in. With the loss of power, currency, and communication, the survivors must adapt to the new world, one where resources are scarce and life as once known no longer exists. In the face of scarcity, survivors learn to ration supplies meticulously. Food, water, and medical supplies, once taken for granted, became precious commodities. The ability to ration these resources, to make them last as long as possible, was a crucial survival skill. Finding food became a daily challenge. Hunting, foraging, and fishing, once hobbies or pastimes, became vital survival skills. Some survivors cultivated gardens, growing whatever fruits and vegetables they could in often inhospitable conditions. Others turned to less conventional food sources, such as insects, which are high in protein and relatively abundant. Water purification became a necessity, not a luxury. With the breakdown of municipal water systems, survivors had to find ways to make water safe to drink. Boiling was the most common method, but in the absence of fire, survivors learned other methods like solar disinfection or using iodine tablets. Life without power meant adjusting to a world without electricity. The survivors had to adapt to darkness, cold, and the loss of electronic devices. Cooking over open fires, reading by candlelight, and navigating by the stars became the new normal. The end of currency also meant the end of conventional trade. Instead, bartering became the means of acquiring goods. A can of food, a bottle of clean water, or a packet of seeds could be traded for other essentials. Trust and mutual aid became currency in this new world. Communication in the post-collapse world also underwent a drastic change. Without the internet, telephones, and television, information became a valuable resource. Messages were passed from person to person, or left in predetermined locations for others to find. In this new world order, adaptation was key. The ability to learn, to change, and to adjust to the harsh new reality was what separated those who survived from those who did not. For those who managed to adapt, the end of the world was not just about survival. It was about resilience, ingenuity, and the indomitable human spirit. The survivors learned to see opportunities where others saw only despair, and in doing so, they discovered that even in the face of the greatest adversity, hope could still be found. In this harsh new reality, threats did not only come from the destabilized environment, but also from fellow survivors. The collapse of law enforcement and social order led to an increase in criminal activities. Looters, taking advantage of the chaos, often scoured abandoned houses and businesses for valuable resources. These individuals or groups, driven by desperation or greed, posed a significant danger to survivors who still had possessions worth taking. Militias, formed by survivors banding together for protection and mutual aid, wielded considerable power in this new world order. While some aimed to maintain a semblance of order and justice, others succumbed to a survival of the fittest mentality, imposing their will through force. These groups often claimed resource-rich territories, demanding tribute from those who wished to pass through or utilize the resources. The end of modern healthcare also brought its own host of challenges. Diseases, once easily preventable or treatable, became significant threats. The lack of sanitation led to outbreaks of waterborne diseases like cholera and dysentery. Lack of access to vaccines and medical treatments also meant that illnesses like measles, tuberculosis, and influenza could become deadly again. Perhaps the most insidious threat of all, however, was the psychological impact of living in a post-apocalyptic world. The constant threat of danger, the struggle for survival, the loss of loved ones, and the collapse of the world as they knew it took a heavy toll on survivors' mental health. Depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder became widespread, often exacerbating the already dire conditions. In this new world, threats came just as much from within as from without. Survivors had to be constantly alert, not just to potential physical dangers, but also to the psychological pitfalls that could lead to inaction, poor decision-making, or even self-destruction. Yet amidst all these challenges, the human spirit proved remarkably resilient. Some survivors found new purpose in helping others, forming communities that were more cooperative than competitive. They discovered that in a world where survival was not guaranteed, compassion, empathy, and mutual support could be just as crucial as guns, ammunition, and canned food. They proved that even in the face of the end of the world, humanity could find a way to adapt, survive, and perhaps, in time, even thrive. As the dust of the world's end began to settle, the importance of community became irrefutably clear. Individuals and isolated families, no matter how well prepared, found themselves unable to sustain survival in the long term without a network of shared resources and mutual aid. The creation of these communities was not without its complications, however. Trust had to be carefully built and maintained, leadership needed to be established and respected, and defense mechanisms had to be implemented to protect against external threats. Trust, in this fractured post-apocalyptic world, was a rare and precious commodity. It was built slowly, through shared experiences and demonstrated reliability. It was maintained through honesty, consistency, and mutual respect. A single betrayal could shatter trust, destabilizing the community and leaving its members vulnerable. Consequently, trust was not given lightly, and those who proved untrustworthy were often ostracized or banished. Leadership in these nascent communities often fell to those who were able to make calm, rational decisions under pressure, those who could inspire trust and loyalty, and those who demonstrated a commitment to the welfare of the group above their own personal gain. Yet the role of a leader was not without its challenges. Difficult decisions had to be made, disputes had to be settled, and the balance between authority and autonomy had to be delicately managed to avoid resentment and rebellion. Defense was a crucial aspect of these communities. It was not enough to simply establish a community. It had to be protected against outside threats. These could range from roving gangs of marauders to territorial disputes with neighboring communities. The defense strategies often involved a combination of fortification, surveillance, and, when necessary, combat. Yet, even as these communities grappled with the challenges of trust, leadership, and defense, they began to see the potential for something more than just survival. They saw the potential for rebuilding. They found that with cooperation, they could not only endure, but also begin to restore some semblance of the world they had lost. They could plant crops, build shelters, and establish trade routes. They could create rules and laws to govern their society and foster a sense of order and justice. This process was not easy, nor was it swift. It involved trial and error, conflict and compromise. It required a spirit of cooperation and a commitment to the common good that was often tested by the harsh realities of post-apocalyptic life. Yet, with each small achievement, these communities took a step closer to reclaiming their humanity, demonstrating that even in the face of the end of the world, the human spirit could not only survive but find a way to rebuild. In the wake of the all-consuming calamity, the question of long-term survival arose. The initial stages of survival involved scavenging and hunting, but this was not sustainable in the long run. As resources dwindled, the communities began to explore the concept of agriculture, a return to the earth much like our early ancestors. Seeds were a precious commodity, salvaged from the ruins or traded among communities. Every seed planted was a beacon of hope, a promise for the future. But the process was fraught with challenges. The earth had been ravaged, its fertility diminished. It took time to restore balance, to coax life from the scarred soil. Yet slowly, with patience and perseverance, green shoots began to appear, soon followed by the first fruits of their labor. These agricultural endeavors were a testament to the community's resilience and their determination to not just survive, but to thrive. Another vital aspect of sustaining life was energy. With the collapse of the grid, communities had to find new ways to power their settlements. This led to a renaissance of sorts in renewable energy. Solar panels were salvaged and repurposed, Wind turbines were constructed, and waterways were harnessed for hydropower. These renewable energy resources were not only sustainable, but they also fostered a level of independence, freeing the communities from reliance on dwindling fossil fuels. They became symbols of resilience, of the human capability to adapt and innovate even in the direst of circumstances. Trade emerged as a critical component in the New World Order. It was a means of acquiring resources that a community could not produce itself. These trade routes were precarious, fraught with danger, yet they were essential. They also served as lines of communication between communities, fostering relationships and alliances that were crucial for survival. Knowledge became the most valuable commodity in this new world. The ability to grow food, to purify water, to treat illness, to repair machinery, to navigate, to negotiate. These skills were treasured and passed down to ensure the community's survival. Schools were established, not in the traditional sense, but as centers of survival knowledge. Elders, with their wisdom and experience, were revered, and their teachings were eagerly absorbed by young learners, forming an unbroken chain of resilience and survival. In essence, these post-apocalyptic societies were a testament to the indomitable human spirit, the ceaseless determination to survive, adapt, and eventually thrive, even in the face of the unimaginable. The end of the world did not signify the end of humanity, but rather a rebirth, a chance to start anew, to learn from past mistakes, and to build a sustainable future on the ashes of the old world. In this new world, power structures inevitably began to surface. The sheer necessity of survival demanded organization, hierarchy, and leadership. These were not the governments of the old world, marred by bureaucracy and corruption, but a more rudimentary form of governance, dictated by the primal needs of survival and the shared goals of the community. Leaders emerged, not through political campaigns or nepotism, but through merit. Those who could provide, protect, and guide became the ones to follow. These leaders were not infallible, nor were they always fair, but they were necessary. They were the ones who made the tough decisions, who took on the burden of responsibility, who put the well-being of the community before their own. Different communities adopted different ideologies, shaped by their environment, their needs, and their experiences. Some embraced a form of communal living, where resources were shared, tasks were divided, and everyone contributed to the survival of the group. Others leaned towards a more individualistic approach, where each person was responsible for their own survival, though they were still bound by a common code of conduct. Despite these differences, a common thread ran through these post-collapse societies: the value of human life. In a world where every life was a precious resource, where every pair of hands could contribute to the survival of the community, the sanctity of life was a principle that was fiercely upheld. Yet surviving in this new world was not just about physical survival. It was about preserving humanity, about holding on to the things that make us human. Art, music, storytelling, laughter, these were not luxuries, but necessities. They provided comfort, relief, a sense of normalcy in a world that was anything but normal. They were reminders of the world that once was, and a beacon of hope for the world that could be. Navigating this new world was a constant balancing act, a tightrope walk between survival and humanity. There were missteps and setbacks, moments of despair and disillusionment, but there were also moments of triumph, of unity, of resilience. Through it all, humanity proved its mettle, proved that it was capable of rising from the ashes, of rebuilding, of continuing, even when everything seemed lost. In this post-apocalyptic world, new powers emerged, not from wealth or political influence, but from the ability to adapt, to innovate, to persevere. This was a world where knowledge was power, where resilience was wealth, and where humanity was the greatest asset. This was a world reborn from the ashes of the old, a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity. It was a world that was harsh, unforgiving, yet filled with potential and hope. It was a world that, despite everything, was still worth fighting for. Reflecting on this journey through the end of the world and the rebirth of society, one cannot help but marvel at the resilience and adaptability of the human spirit. From the ruins of a shattered world, humanity rose again, fierce and unbroken, carrying the lessons of the past into a new, uncertain future. We've seen how, even in the face of the unimaginable, people found ways to survive, to adapt, to thrive. They learned to navigate the harsh realities of a post-apocalyptic world, to harness the resources around them, to forge new communities and societies out of the ashes of the old. The world might have ended, but humanity did not. This resilience, this ability to bounce back from disaster, is a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. It's a reminder that no matter how bleak things may seem, there is always hope, always a chance for renewal. Yet it's also a stark reminder of the fragility of civilization, of how easily the world as we know it can crumble. It's a wake-up call, a stark warning, a plea for vigilance. For while humanity may survive the end of the world, it's a scenario we would do well to avoid. In the end, survival is more than just physical endurance. It's about preserving our humanity, maintaining our values, upholding the essence of who we are. It's about holding on to hope, no matter how bleak things may seem. It's about finding beauty in the midst of chaos, light in the midst of darkness, love in the midst of despair. For when the world ends, survival is not just about staying alive. It's about living, truly living, cherishing every moment, every breath, every heartbeat. It's about embracing the world in all its beauty and all its terror and saying, I am here, I am alive, I am human. And in this perhaps lies the greatest lesson of all. For while the end of the world may be a terrifying prospect, it's not the end of us. It's not the end of humanity. And as long as we hold on to that, as long as we remember who we are, what we stand for, we will always find a way to survive, to endure, to rise. Because in the end, survival is not just about weathering the storm. It's about learning to dance in the rain, to find joy in the midst of sorrow, to find hope in the midst of despair. It's about realizing that even when the world ends, life goes on. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all. Thanks for listening. This has been How to Survive the Apocalypse. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.